For 13 years, I raised my ex-wife's child as my own daughter, despite knowing she wasn't biologically mine. The moment she was born, I felt a twinge of uncertainty. With her blonde hair and blue eyes, she stood out starkly against my Mediterranean features: olive skin, dark eyes and hair. My ex-wife, though not as dark as me, also had brown eyes and relatively dark brown hair. The discrepancy in our daughter's appearance was undeniable, but I chose to trust my marriage and signed the birth certificate. Deep down, I knew a paternity test was inevitable. Yet, as I brought our little girl home, I couldn't help but fall in love with her innocence and beauty. The bond between us grew stronger every day, despite the impending truth I feared. When the results confirmed she wasn't biologically mine, it shattered the fragile facade of our marriage. My ex-wife's affair partner, a man with blonde hair and blue eyes just like our daughter, denied any responsibility. He had his own family and wanted no part in the aftermath. Amidst the emotional turmoil, my ex-wife's life spiraled into chaos. Legal troubles stemming from her reckless decisions, identity theft, assault, even grand theft auto ensured she wouldn't be part of our children's lives. I fought for custody and eventually gained sole responsibility for our kids. It was a tumultuous time, marked by heartbreak and legal battles, but my priority was clear: to provide a stable, loving environment for my children. Life moved on, and I remarried. My current wife, who is Asian, welcomed my eldest daughter with open arms. Despite looking markedly different, tall, blonde and blue-eyed, she never hesitated to embrace her as part of our family. Together we've built a home filled with love, understanding, and acceptance. We've since had 2 more children, both of whom adore their big sister. Despite the challenges and heartache, my eldest daughter has always been a daddy's girl. Our bond is unbreakable, built on love and shared experiences. She knows her biological origins and understands that genetics don't define family. My wife and I have ensured she feels just as cherished and valued as her younger siblings. However, recent events have reopened old wounds. A conversation with my father about his will revealed his intention to exclude my eldest daughter. He justified it by stating she's not a real grandchild due to her appearance. His words cut deep, questioning the acceptance and love he had shown her all these years. My father, typically kind and generous, seemed to prioritize blood relations over the bonds we've nurtured. It's left me torn. On one hand, I understand familial traditions and the significance some attach to blood ties. On the other, I see the hurt and confusion in my daughter's eyes, the daughter I've raised, loved, and protected as my own. She's part of our family fabric, woven into every holiday, celebration, and ordinary day. To see her excluded feels like a betrayal of everything we've worked so hard to build: a family based on love, not biology. My wife has been a pillar of strength, advocating fiercely for our daughter's rightful place in our family and in my father's will. She reminds me daily of the importance of love and inclusion, regardless of genetic makeup. Yet, the rift with my father lingers, challenging my own beliefs about family and belonging. Navigating this delicate balance between familial duty and advocating for my daughter's rightful place has become my new reality. I'm grappling with tough decisions about how to confront my father's beliefs while protecting my daughter's sense of self-worth and belonging. It's a journey of heartache, resilience, and ultimately, reaffirming what family truly means to me. He doesn't want anything to do with either of her biological parents. She's seen her biological dad only a handful of times in her entire life, and I doubt he even remembers her middle name. He seems to have successfully kept his family together and his wife from leaving him, but he definitely doesn't want any involvement. My ex-wife continued to spiral for a long while, and now lives in another state with another man and her new family. Thankfully, she rarely makes contact. I've never really tried to pursue either of them for money. I don't need it, and it's not a situation I want to stir up. My siblings are mostly supportive, although they have mixed feelings. Some say they could never raise the child of a partner's affair, but they all love and accept their niece. Despite this support, I can't get over how distant and upset I feel about my father's stance. He's an extremely kind and generous man who's always taken care of his family, providing opportunities and a lifestyle I could never have achieved without him. I love and look up to him, which is why I feel so betrayed. It feels wrong that she's the only one of his grandchildren excluded from his will, apparently because he doesn't consider her a real grandchild. Intellectually, I understand he's technically correct, but it still feels wrong. She is my daughter. Am I wrong for feeling this way? Am I just being entitled and unreasonable here? Comments. Jacoby Dave. I understand why some family members might think you're foolish for raising the result of your ex-wife's affair, but it speaks well of your character that you treat her as your own. I wonder if your parents would be similarly non-accepting if you had adopted a child, because practically that's what happened. I wish you and your family the best. NTA. PA Law Fox 32. I think Ob should ask his parents if they would feel this way about an adopted child. Because that's essentially what you did. You put your name on her birth certificate and raised her knowing she wasn't biologically yours. You adopted her, and she's your daughter. Live Western 1389. I agree. She was born into your family, and you have claimed her as your own child, the same as if you'd adopted her or brought her into the world through birth. That's very important to me, and anyone who didn't want to accept that and wanted to treat her differently from my other kids would not be someone I'd want spending much time with any of my kids. NTA. I think you are an amazing dad. Agile Weight 7571. My stepmother did this for me. Although I wasn't an affair child, my father died when I was 15, and my birth mother spent most of her life institutionalized for mental health concerns. My stepmother, like you, was a saint. You will probably never fully know the good you have done. Robert the World Maker. No, you're a goddamn saint. The problem is, you're thinking other people will be saints too, and they're not. Their reactions are understandable, but it makes me sad for her when she eventually learns the truth of how they see her. Any update? Just a small update. Thanks for the comments and wishes. They really put a lot of things into perspective and confirmed that I needed to say something. Some people seem surprised at how I let my daughter's biological parents off the hook, so to speak. The main reason I've never tried to go after my ex or her affair partner for child support is that my daughter is more important than money. I'm not struggling at all, and I have the support I need. More importantly, I have my daughter. Even though the affair partner didn't want anything to do with her, my lawyer mentioned way back that either he or my wife, being her biological parents, could have a strong case for seeking custody. I know I'm biased, but her biological dad seems indifferent, and I wouldn't put it past him to try to get custody just to avoid paying child support. The idea of her having to stay with him is something I don't even want to think about. Similarly, when her mom got out of prison, she quickly moved in with her new guy and was willing to let the matter lie, so I did the same. The fact that neither of them tried to get her, and my ex hasn't bothered to keep much contact with our son either, tells me everything I need to know about the kind of parents they are. They only seem interested in their new families. I wouldn't want to risk trying to back them into taking custody. With my daughter being 13, we've likely run out the clock on that matter, but it's still not a risk worth taking. In better and more important news, I talked with my dad. We met for lunch, which was easy enough as he's around most days, and we were able to sync up some time. Mentioned that I wanted to talk to my father about my daughter not being included in his will. I explained to him that even if it meant dividing what was being left to me or my other kids, I felt it was crucial for her to be included. I pointed out that it would be devastating for her to find out she'd been excluded after his death. My father agreed, saying she is a lovely girl and he loves her, and he wouldn't want to add extra pain or bitterness to her life, especially at such a time. It had also gotten back to him that I had been discussing this with my siblings, and I think my mom talked to him as well. He acknowledged that it was obviously very important to me, stating, "You're my son, I can just change it. It's not so much money anyway." He was right, the amounts of money left to individual grandchildren weren't massive, but the gesture and thought were what mattered most. Most of the estate was going to my mom or US kids anyway. There was no reason for me to expect him to be stubborn or hard-hearted about any of this. It was just something we needed to discuss. My father reiterated that everyone loves my daughter, and that she will always be family, and always have a home. He mentioned a gold bracelet he has worn occasionally over the years, which my daughter thought was pretty when she was very little. She noticed it on his wrist and said jewelry was for girls. He laughed and explained that sometimes boys wear jewelry too. She thought it was nice, and he let her try it on, even though it was way too big for her wrist. She was a little toddler then. I hadn't known about that moment between them, and I thought it was really sweet that he remembered. He said he was going to leave her the bracelet and a note, and that, as far as money goes, she'd get the same share as the rest of my kids. We had a nice lunch, and both felt better for it. Nothing too dramatic, but it was really the best way things could have gone. Thanks everyone for confirming that I wasn't being crazy, and that I needed to talk to my father to set things right. Comments from the community. User 1716, this is a happy update. Your father is a good man, and he raised you to be a wonderful man. User Rage Sadness Alanon, I love a story of good people being good people. It's sad that there have to be such bad ones to make the good ones stand out. But I guess that's life. I hope Oop and his family have a wonderful one. User May Well Flower, Let's be real, Oop didn't have to step up, but thank goodness he did. He's doing right by all his kids, whether biological or not. His side of the family needs to understand that his adopted daughter may have come to him under unusual circumstances, but that doesn't change the basic fact that Oop sees her as his real daughter, and they need to respect that. I hope his family continues to have that epiphany before they find themselves on the outs with him, and all his kids. User Alesa23 Oop adopted his daughter, but more importantly, his daughter has an actual blood sibling with her older brother. A family of kids with a mix of 4 different parents, they are all interconnected, even if some aren't directly blood related. They are a family, and Oop understands that. He is an incredible father, and his kids will grow up to be good people. User Random 1234 I was there for the original posts and was infuriated. Your adopted child is your child, full stop, no qualifiers. Your child's child is your grandchild, full stop, no qualifiers. Oop's father partially got it, but it sounds like mainly for Oop's sake, not his granddaughter's. User Average Cypress sometimes that's all we can ask for, and it's much preferable to him sticking to his original plan. Story 2 Exposing Infidelity. I was married to my ex-wife for almost 3 years, but we had to go our separate ways due to her infidelity. My ex-wife and I grew up in the same town, so we weren't complete strangers when we started dating. We even went to the same high school, but I was a couple of classes ahead of her, and we didn't get close to each other until after college. From the beginning, I didn't want to leave our town for greener pastures. I loved it there, and always wanted to be close to the people who mattered. The same applied to my ex-wife. She returned to oversee her parents' restaurant after college, and that's when our relationship started. We became close friends after she returned, and a few months later, we started dating. Since we lived in a small town, everyone knew we were in a relationship and expected us to get married, which we did after a year and 7 months of dating. I worked as a carpenter and earned a decent amount of money, so I gave my ex-wife the kind of wedding she wanted. It wasn't large, but it was what she desired, and everything went as planned. After our wedding, we went on our honeymoon, but just 2 days later we had to return because her mother passed away in her sleep. It was a very tough season for both of us, and the first year of our marriage was filled with mourning. She was an only child, and I can only imagine how terrible it must have been for her to lose her mother like that. Meanwhile, I supported her in every way I could. I grieved with her, cared for her, and was always there for her. It wasn't the start of our marital journey that I had imagined, but death is unpredictable and uncontrollable. My ex-wife began to emerge from her shell in the 2nd year of our marriage. Her loss had turned her into a shadow of herself, and she lost interest in many things. When she started to recover, I was thrilled and looked forward to the kind of marriage I had always envisioned. The first year was incredibly tough for me. I loved her deeply and didn't want to break our vows. I had hoped that once she overcame her mother's death, our relationship and marriage would improve. However, that didn't happen. I felt a coldness from her, and even during intimate moments, the spark we had while dating was missing. Often it felt like I was forcing myself on her. The situation worsened, so I turned to online research for answers. I learned a lot and began to understand why she was acting that way. I knew I had to give her time, but it felt like the more time I gave, the more we drifted apart. I didn't enjoy the first 2 years of my marriage, but I stayed, hoping she would snap out of her state and change. Once, I confronted her about her changed behavior and expressed my dissatisfaction with our marriage. She accused me of being selfish and insensitive. The most frustrating part was that she acted lively and engaged in public, laughing at jokes and interacting with others, as if everything was fine. But as soon as we got home, she reverted to her detached self. Our marriage became monotonous, and after weeks of nagging her about her attitude, I started to see some changes. She became more active at home, spent time with me, and we began to do fun things we hadn't done since her mother's death. Her changes made me feel loved, and throughout the time she was grieving, I remained faithful. Temptations arose, especially since our conversations were dull and I wasn't getting what I needed, but I loved her too much to jeopardize our marriage with a fleeting mistake. For the following months, our home was filled with happiness and laughter. I cherished her company. The highlight was discovering she was pregnant. I was ecstatic about becoming a father and felt like I was finally experiencing the marriage I had always dreamed of. 6 months into her pregnancy, I decided to make it up to her. The news of her mother's death had ruined our honeymoon, and though she never mentioned it, I knew she would love to return to the same place. It was expensive, but I started saving for it 2 months after things returned to normal, After all the bookings and preparations were made, I broke the news to her. We treated it not just as our honeymoon but as a romantic getaway, which she loved. Our wedding anniversary was a week after our return, and we planned to renew our vows in front of friends and family. The vow renewal was my idea, as I felt it was necessary since we were finally enjoying our marriage. The second honeymoon was wonderful. We visited various places, took numerous pictures, and tried different foods. On our sixth day, I made a shocking discovery. My ex-wife had handed me her phone to show me a viral news story on Facebook. While she was in the bathroom, I accidentally opened her text messages. I know I shouldn't have read them, but I couldn't resist. It was my first time doing so. One contact, saved as my happiness in Spanish, piqued my curiosity. To my shock, it was our former wedding planner. Their messages included nudes, pictures of them in bed, and photos of them kissing. They had been dating for 2 years, and their second anniversary was a month after ours. I felt like the room was spinning and my chest was about to explode. No words can fully describe how I felt. Amazingly, even in my state of shock, I managed to forward all their messages to my phone and delete the sent messages so she wouldn't find out. Our romantic getaway was ruined, and my attitude changed drastically. I was consumed with worry that the child she was carrying wasn't mine. I didn't sleep well or think straight. I even missed working on most of my clients' projects because I wasn't in the right frame of mind. I kept everything inside and didn't confront her about anything. She was so engrossed in our small vow renewal party that she thought I was having mood swings again. On our anniversary, we went through the motions, and I was patient enough for our vows to be renewed, though they didn't mean anything to me anymore. Afterward, I asked for the gifts I got for her to be brought in so she could open them in front of everyone. Anyone who saw the size of the gifts could tell they were framed pictures, but maybe she thought they were photos from our second honeymoon. I asked for the photos to be given to her so she could open them herself. When she did, everyone gasped and she froze. I then asked her to open the second one, and she reluctantly did so with tears in her eyes. Finally, I opened the last one myself. All 3 pictures were of her, and our former wedding planner in bed together, naked, and another of them kissing. Funnily enough, he was in attendance with his wife and children, as we were close in some way. I felt so satisfied to expose my ex-wife and embarrass her in front of everyone. Then I told her it was over between us, and that I wanted nothing to do with the child she was carrying because it was obviously not mine. She cried, begged me, and even said she didn't know how she ended up in an affair with him but was drawn to him because he comforted her more and didn't fake his grieving like I did. I was shocked to hear her say that because I had sacrificed so much to be with her in her grief. It hurt, and gave me even more reason to get her out of my life. We divorced shortly after, and the whole town carried the news. The wedding planner's wife was furious too, and she divorced him. In addition, he was forced to retire after the word spread like wildfire. I never took responsibility for the pregnancy, and the wedding planner denied it was his until a DNA test proved otherwise. It still hurts whenever I remember what I got in return for being patient with my ex-wife and loving her foolishly. I haven't healed yet, and the wound reopens each time I see her or bump into her. It's been 4 years, and I haven't been in another relationship since. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm sure I can never love another woman the way I loved my ex-wife. That part of me is gone.